If you look at the academic studies, which I like because they're peer reviewed and they try, obviously they're controlled experiments. They really try to remove all of the noise around anecdotes and biases and people's feelings and everything else. First thing is there's a really huge study that came out of the UK, and they found that people were 2% more effective when they're co-located in the same space. And beyond that, in time sensitive and critical situations, they were 10% more effective when they worked in person versus working remotely. And this was across a massive sample size, tens of thousands of employees.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where smart tech gives you the edge, but smart strategy is what keeps you in the game. And yeah, both come with updates. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. Help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. How do you manage a team when half the people are in the office and the other half are at home in their pajamas? 5 years after the world went crazy and remote overnight, hybrid work isn't a trend. It is the new reality that we're all dealing with on seems like an ongoing basis. And while it sounds like the best of both worlds, in some cases, I guess it does come with its own set of challenges that far too many companies are still maybe getting a little bit wrong or sometimes a lot wrong. I've been there. Managing a hybrid workforce isn't about crossing your fingers and hoping people show up. It demands intentional leadership, clear expectations, and a complete rethink of everything from communication rhythms to office design. In this episode, we explore the real reasons why hybrid work feels harder than fully remote or fully in office setups, what smart companies are doing to bridge the growing gap between leadership's vision and employees' lived experience. And that was a big lesson for me. You'll hear why setting structured in office days matters more than ever, how AI is supercharging productivity without bloating headcount, and why your office space needs a serious upgrade if you want collaboration to thrive. We'll also dig into the uncomfortable truth: hybrid success doesn't happen by accident. It requires a level of thoughtfulness, consistency, and flexibility that few organizations are naturally good at. But those that figure it out are setting themselves up for massive wins in performance, retention, and culture. If you're tired of half measures and missed opportunities in your hybrid setup, or just want to know what it really takes to build a thriving modern workplace, this episode has the playbook you need. Let's dive in. Our expert guest last Thursday was Roger Crawford, named by Sports Illustrated as one of the most accomplished physically challenged athletes in the world. He shared how he turned obstacles into opportunities. From a Division I tennis star to a world-renowned motivational speaker, Roger taught us that challenges are unavoidable, but defeat, that's a choice. And our founder last week was Richard Walker, CEO and co-founder of Quick. He showed us how strategic leadership, company culture, and intentional growth can turn frustration with paperwork into a multi-million-dollar SaaS success story. Absolutely fantastic. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and check them out. Absolute gold there. I love my conversation with Roger, one of my all-time favorite interviews. My guest today is Micah Remley, CEO of Robin, the workplace management platform revolutionizing how hybrid work gets done. With a background leading high-growth SaaS companies like MineralTree and scaling Internap from startup to NASDAQ listing, Micah knows what it takes to drive innovation, operational excellence, and user-centered growth. At Robin, he's helping companies design intentional hybrid strategies, optimize collaboration, and use AI to boost productivity, all while redefining what the future of work looks like. Welcome, my guest, Micah Remley. Hey, Micah, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Great to be here today, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
You've led high growth companies across different industries, which I always think is fascinating. Internac, which was energy management, MineralTree, a fintech company, and now Robin in workplace management. What is it that drew you to tackling the hybrid work challenge?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I'll start a little bit further back, which is my first high growth company was Internap, which was an energy management technology company. And that's where I really fell in love with growth businesses. And I think once you get bit by the bug for growth businesses, it's hard to look at something else. There's just
Absolutely.
something really special about bringing all those ingredients together, being in that high growth phase after you found product market fit and really trying to scale an organization. So that's something that I really fell in love with. And I got introduced to Robin. It was in 2021. Everyone was trying to figure out how to make hybrid work.
Yeah.
And it was a real challenge. And it was, as a CEO, it was an extreme challenge for me. And I really thought the vision of this ability to have part of the time in the office and having the collaboration and productivity benefits of that while also having some flexibility, I just thought made a lot of sense, but making it work was really challenging. And as we see, many companies are still struggling with it
Yes,
5 years
absolutely.
after the pandemic. So that's what I loved about Robin. I loved, hey, tackling this challenge that was really near and dear to my heart that I thought really could make a difference. And I've loved that about what we're tackling at Robin.
Oh, very cool. And why do you think it is that companies struggle so much with hybrid work?
Yeah. It's hard to, I talk about this a lot at the organization and externally too. It's easy to be in one state or another state. It's easy to be
Yeah,
fully remote, or it's easy to be fully in the office. And you see that debate, obviously, in the news almost every single day
sure.
today. It's really hard to be somewhere in the middle. It takes a way more active management and, I'd say, way more specificity in what you're doing, intentionality with what you're doing. And what we see as failed is people really not being intentional about what hybrid work looks like. And unfortunately, it actually takes even more management to make hybrid work. I think people thought, well, we're just going to throw the office doors open again. People are going to come back into the office. They're going to find that right balance and all will be good again. And what we've seen over
Right.
the past 5 years is people threw their doors open. People didn't return to the office because, once again, it's hard to exist in that hybrid, that in between state. You
Right.
gravitate towards one or the other. And if your starting state was working remote, then we see most people stayed remote. It's easier for employees. There's a whole bunch of reasons for it. So that intentionality is really the hard part, and doing something very different, managing expectations, managing the workplace very differently. So that's why most organizations have failed. And it's a lot of work. And listen, I wish I could say, hey, we understand a lot of best practices. We understand what's working, but there is no, here's the magic bullet. This is what's going to work to make hybrid work for your organization.
Yeah. Was there just an aha moment that made you realize that managing hybrid was so much different, so much more of a challenge and kind of in need of innovation?
Yeah, the aha moment was really in those days after the pandemic, where we were saying, "All right, everyone, office is open again. Please return." What we saw was we'd have a couple of good days. People would return. We'd have a company event or something, and we all said, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is what life could look like. Isn't it awesome being in person again?" And then all of a sudden, you would say, "All right, let's get to status quo," and things would wane. And he said, "Why can't we capture this best of both worlds? This
Right.
at home part of the time, at work part of the time, but doing that on a very regular basis." And that was the aha moment of we had to take a very different approach to this. And for me, it was multifold. At Robin, I'll tell you a quick story. At Robin, we were once again really trying to focus. We always, given the space that we're in, we want to exhibit best practices in hybrid work management. So we said, hey, listen, we'd like you in the office a couple days a week, but work from home a couple days a week. You figure out what that looks like. We're going to try not to put in strict policies or expectations. And we were seeing, once again, not great traction with that across the organization. It was a couple of years ago. So I looked at some things. So first of all, I looked at hiring. And we were still keeping up our hiring practices of during the pandemic, which we would just hire people anywhere. So the folks that were in the office were saying, why should I come into the office on a regular basis if all of my colleagues are remote? It doesn't make
Right.
sense. So we really had to go to the beginning and start from scratch and say, all right, we're going to have hiring expectations of a certain percentage of hiring needs to happen in our Boston office, which is our headquarters, or we have an office in Europe too. It needs to happen in one of those two offices. So it was really, we had to look at everything from start, not just what our office policies were, how we're operating as an organization, what our expectations were. And it's taken a while. It's taken a couple of years to get to a place where I think we actually have that really good hybrid balance. but it wasn't a, hey, we just flipped a switch and all of a sudden. I think that's why lots of things have failed. People said, all right, we have a 3-day a week policy, flinging the doors open again, and then it doesn't really work to people's
Right.
expectations. And I think that's why.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Last time we talked, you told me something that just absolutely blew my mind, and it brought so much clarity. And that was just the divide between employees and CEOs.
Yeah.
So employees define hybrid work differently than CEOs.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that, how they define it, and what that gap is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when I say hybrid work, if I say that to a CEO, is going to say, all right, that probably means 3 or 4 days a week in the office and 1 or 2 days of flexibility working from home. If I
Right.
were to say that to an employee, it means most of my time at home and going to the office when I want, which by the way ends up meaning once a month or something like that. If we look at how most of those implementations look like. So that is really the fun. This is why it takes so much intentionality in getting something good right, in a lot of communication and expectation management across organizations to get it right. Unfortunately, it's not a, hey, just once again, open the doors and employees will meet my expectations. And I think that's why you see just continued so much discussion and deep debate around what hybrid work looks like, because there's are those very differing views. You see it in popular culture every single day, of those very different views of what hybrid work looks like.
Yeah, that was just really clarifying. As we went through the exact same thing, just most other companies did, and this big decision was: do we even keep the office because everything was remote? Things are great. Do we even want to do that? And the answer was yes. And we downsized
Right.
a smaller office and then have people in, but really struggle with the same thing. It's like, why is nobody coming back?
Yep.
But it was for those events, and we found that balance now. But that was a really big aha moment of just looking back, and I can see it because that was my expectation, is everybody's going to want to come back and hang out together, and we did for a while, and then went back and mostly remote and in the office a little bit. And
Yep.
some people all the time, they love it there, and then others, like you said, once a month. That's just the expectation. And just getting on the same page with those expectations was so important.
Yep.
And it wasn't until you said that it just really clicked of that's exactly what was going on.
Yeah, that's so right.
Yeah.
And then there's this coordination that needs to happen too. So expectations is one, and we have a policy now that need to be in the office 2 days a week. One day is a team day. One day is flexibility. 2 to 3 days is really what we're aiming for. If we look at the research, the academic research clearly shows that the highest productivity environments are about half the time in the office. Half the time in the office is the highest productivity environment. It allows you for the benefits of all that in-person collaboration. At the
Yeah.
same time, it allows you that flexibility to work from home, to have heads down time and everything else. So that's what we really aim for as an organization. What we were finding though was sometimes we weren't quite getting that collaboration benefit. So what we did was we talked a little bit about having expectations around when people are in the office and number of days a week, number of days a month. One of the things we did was we instituted Team Tuesdays. We saw this really coming as a best practice, was having team days. And the whole company comes into the office on Tuesdays. And it's really interesting if we look at that. Because what that is, when we did that, what we had to do is we had to be, once again, intentional about people's schedules. Don't schedule remote meetings on Tuesdays. Have
Yeah.
in-person meetings on Tuesdays. So once again, this is all the stuff that you have to change because people had all this behavior that they've built up over the past few years. And what happens is if you have people come into the office and then they just sit in remote meetings all day, which I told you before, we looked at this. We looked at the number of meetings that happen in meeting rooms because we have this amazing data set, right? And of the meetings that happen in conference rooms in offices, 50% are fully remote, meaning one person sitting in a conference room with only remote people on the call. So if you
Yeah.
think about if people are spending most of their time in the office on fully remote meetings, why are they coming to the office at all? It doesn't make any
Exactly.
sense whatsoever. So we made that change. We said, all right, you're going to come to the office on Tuesdays, a team. That's our in-person collaboration day. We're going to schedule in-person collaboration events. And I was actually just looking at the data on that last week because we have our office, as you can imagine, outfitted with all the latest workplace technology. What we found was on Tuesdays, the average person at Rob in our company is only at their desk 35% of the time. That means 2/3 of their time they're actually collaborating in person with other people at the organization, which is
That's really
the,
good.
the whole purpose of having us come into the office. It's the whole purpose.
Yeah, why do you think that's the sweet spot, 2 or 3 days a week?
Yeah, so a few things is that the first of all, the benefits of in-person work are well documented. So there's
Sure.
lots of debate, and I think we get lost in anecdotes all the time. There are some people that are superstars that can work remotely, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that need to work in person to get the
Yeah.
best out of them. And I think I've talked to you a little bit in the past about the academic research around this, and there's some really unique studies, but I'll cite a couple of them, and then we'll get to why 2 to 3 days a week is the right thing. So if you look at the academic studies, which I like because they're peer reviewed and they try, obviously they're controlled experiments. They really try to remove all of the noise around anecdotes and biases and people's
Right.
feelings and everything else. First thing is there's a really huge study that came out of the UK, and they found that people were 2% more effective when they're co-located in the same space. And beyond that, in time sensitive and critical situations, they were 10% more effective when they worked in person versus working remotely. And was across a massive sample size, tens of thousands of employees. Then there's out of Stanford and I think it was Northwestern, a couple studies that looked at productivity in the workplace. And once again, they found that 2 to 3 days a week is where you achieve the highest productivity piece for the benefit for two things. Is it allowed people to find that balance of at home time is good for heads down work. You don't have some of the distractions of the office, but it also allows you that benefit of in-person collaboration. And on the in-person collaboration piece, what they found is there's another research study that went and looked at, all right, what about performance? Let's look at performance review scores and actual people's performance. And what they found was that if you sat near a high performer, that you had to sit within 25 feet of them. It's very specific. There's a very specific distance you had to sit within. You got a 15% performance boost for all the people sitting within 25 feet of that high performer, which is really interesting. And there's two reasons you got that performance boost. One was you overheard how people were making the pitch. I could hear how you were making your pitches to customers. I could hear how you were thinking about problems. I could hear all of that. That then had an impact on me and helped me improve my performance. So I hear Jeff talking to a customer a certain way, then that rubs off on me and I learn it. But there was a second really important reason for why you got that performance boost. Do you have any idea what it is?
Maybe competition. You want to you're aspiring to be like that and trying to keep your performance up better than your peers.
You're spot on. That's exactly right. So peer pressure and competition. It's,
Yeah.
hey, if I hear you making a whole bunch of calls, I see you working hard at your desk all the day, it actually makes me work harder. And if that part rubs off on me, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. It's going to the gym. Some people are really good about being disciplined and working out at their home gym, but we also know most home gyms end up being glorified clothes racks. And there's a reason that gym memberships and class memberships and all things are really important is because you end up working harder and you're better when you go to the gym. That works for lots and lots of people. So the same thing is actually true at the office, that you get these two benefits. One is just the learning environment and everything is better, that collaboration environment. But the second is just competition and peer pressure. You perform better when you're at the office for the most part.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's a really good business case for keeping physical office space in a hybrid world.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Absolutely.
Once again, if we look at the data, performance definitely tends to be better. It's not right for every organization. Cultures are different. And that's why you see this array of number of days in the office for different companies. Some have more in the office, some have less. But definitely in person is important for the vast majority of organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating to me. Some are going fully remote and others have doubled down on office space. And there's a lot of debate out there, but I think that you make a really good case for keeping that physical space and keeping people in proximity.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. The gym analogy is great. Home gym, I could never do. Going someplace and doing that that just works for me. And having somebody to go with,
Yeah.
even better.
The discipline too, the discipline of, hey, I get up, I have to go into someplace to go do something. It's a whole different rhythm than, hey, I wake up and should I work out, or is it easier to just read the paper or look at Instagram or whatever it is that day? It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And we ignore it. We say people can get their jobs. And the fact of the matter is there's a spectrum in how people work.
Yes.
And right, some people are very good. They're very self-disciplined. They're intrinsically motivated. They can work well at home. And I think what's amazing to me too, especially when you think about a lot of thought leaders in the space, it's often consultants that work by themselves at home. So they tend to fit in this intrinsically motivated group, and they don't realize that there's a massive spectrum. And if we look at this, the large middle, I'd like to say, tends to be a bit more extrinsically motivated. They need some of that peer pressure. They need that mentorship from other people. If you look at the bulk of employees in the American workforce, that's what they look like. And we miss that a lot in this debate.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people that have a real strong opinion one way or the other think everybody else is like me.
Exactly right. Yep.
And some people are, but
Right.
not everybody.
Not everyone. And when you're managing a workforce of very diverse types of motivation and work styles and everything else,
Yeah.
that gets to your answer of why half the time is about the right time in the office. And once again, it makes sense. If I have this spectrum of employees that have different work styles, different motivations, different everything else, that's probably why the academic studies end up saying 2 to 3 days a week is the right amount of time in the office.
Yeah, it makes a lot of
Catch all
sense.
for those different styles.
So what do you think the most effective ways to rethink office space so it supports collaboration instead of feeling like an empty, underutilized expense?
Yeah. So you really have to rethink it from scratch. And this was the other huge mistake that companies have made over the past 5 years. They said, all right, we want you back in the office. We're flinging the office doors open again and come back and work like you did before. And that didn't work. We know that didn't work, right? The second thing they did was said, all right, let me ask employees. Let me ask employees what they want. Guess what? If you ask employees about what they want in the office, what do you think they ask for when you ask what they want in the office? What do they want the office to look like?
Probably, I don't know. It depends. If you go to Silicon Valley, it's pool tables and ping pong and beer taps. You go
Well,
to other places, maybe it's more collaborative environment.
what's actually interesting, if you ask them in the post-COVID landscape, they want the office to look like home.
Ah,
Right? What's the most comfortable thing that you've got? You want it to look like home, right? So you
yeah,
want it
that
to,
makes sense.
right? That's so like you hear tons of quiet spaces, you hear all this other stuff. And then when we look at broadly customers or excuse me, employers that have gone and created offices that way, it then doesn't end up getting used the way because it's not home. The office is supposed to be different. So we talked about intentionality before. Once again, your at home time is for heads down work. It's for the remote meetings. It's for all of that stuff. And not that you don't need some of that in the office, but really the office is supposed to be designed around collaboration, and especially in a hybrid world. Now, if you're in 5 days a week, it's a different story, right? So 5 days a week is different. But if you're a company that's settling in a hybrid world where people are in a few days a week and at home a couple of days a week, then once again, you're having a very clear division of work, which is at home time is for heads down work and for remote meetings. In the office is for in-person work and in-person collaboration. So the office needs to be very specifically designed around that activity. And where we've seen companies go askew is where they have had that office designed for kind of work prior to 2020. And then employees come back, it's not a great experience. It doesn't meet that need at all. And then they stop coming back, which is what happened. In our software, we actually have something called an abandonment rate, which is employees coming to the office and then not returning to the office. And you can see these high abandonment rates. And often it has to do with some of the expectations we talked about earlier, but also the workplace design and how people are thinking about the workplace. So at our workplace, we've on purpose restricted the number of individual workstations. We've increased conference room capacity because of those peak days. It's where it's real important. We've increased soft seating that really gets used a lot for, once again, impromptu meetings, discussions, and everything else. Because once again, that's what those days, those a couple days a week when people are in the office together, that's what the office is designed for. It's got to support that work in a very specific way.
That's really smart to rethink it that way. And I hadn't thought about it in just more collaborative space. That makes a lot more sense because that's the point.
It's the
Yeah, if
whole
we're going to
point.
be together, we should be together, not everybody go into their individual offices, closing the doors and heads down work. That's defeats the entire purpose.
Why'd I commute all the way in? You talk about earning the
Exactly.
commute. Why'd I commute in to do that? I can just do that from home, right?
And for some big companies, I think sometimes it's just to check a box.
Yeah,
In the office 4 days a week, and the employees have found all sorts of ways to get around that, and some of the big companies, which is funny, but
yeah.
it checks the box.
Gotten creative to once again check a box. And if you're just checking a box, then you're missing the whole point. And if
Yeah.
you, it's often it's funny. I think about it. I've worked in tech now basically for the vast majority of my career. And we didn't have, to be honest with you, in previous companies, like we didn't have an in-office expectation. The kind of base level expectation was you're in 5 days a week.
Right.
We had lots of remote employees. And in tech, we've had the technology to support remote employees well for many years, especially as companies grow. We talked about scaling. Typically, as companies grow, then you're hiring more people in remote locations for sales, to meet your customer base, to find talent, whatever it might be.
Sure.
So we've always had those things. But what happened was this change in expectations and the change in the way that people worked. And that's why I talked about you really have to approach us from the bottom up. Where you're hiring, what do people's meeting schedules and work schedules look like? How do you get coordination around that? What the physical office needs to look like? You need to bring all these things together to have a really healthy and productive hybrid work program. Otherwise, you're missing some of those key components. And before, it was why people came in, it was team expectations. It was, hey, like, Jeff, I'm in the office today, so I hope you are too, because we're working on this project together and I need to work through all of this stuff. And
Right.
that's what a good hybrid work schedule really looks that way. That it's instead of 5 days a week, it's in the office 2 to 3 days a week, but we're still doing that same thing. And those days become even more important. And we talk about this a lot, this move from post-pandemic, everyone thought that ad hoc hybrid was going to be the way it works. Hey, I come in on my own schedule. I figure it out. Ultimate flexibility. I can come in whenever. You talk about ways employees to get really, once again, then it was, all right, if I'm coming to the office and I'm there by myself or I'm not doing
Right.
the collaborative stuff, why did I bother? So that's why you saw people just stop coming in. They weren't coming in. It's like, it wasn't going to earn the commute. Once
There
again,
was no value.
there's no value to them at all.
Yeah.
So what we've really seen is the rise of structured hybrid. And that is what I was saying, what we do. We have a team, we have very specific days across teams. We have a whole company team day that everyone comes in. And that's why it works. So unfortunately, hybrid has to have some structure around it, I think, to really work well for most organizations, because otherwise it's all this ad hoc stuff. And then you don't get the benefit of actually having the office and being in person together.
Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed just for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. Completely free, not a sales call. You can't buy anything on there. And we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform. I think that's missed. It's what is the purpose of coming together? What is the purpose of coming to the office? It's collaboration. I think that part is missed when it becomes an exercise in checking a box, or you have to be here a certain number of days in a month. It doesn't make sense. There's no value in that. But when you can look at it and change that perspective and really define why we're coming in, what's the value? What are we trying to achieve with this? Then it makes a lot more sense.
100% right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
If it comes checking the box, people are just going to find all sorts of ways, and they're not seeing any value in it whatsoever. So I think that's
Yeah.
the key thing is people, listen, there's still going to be debate. Some people are not going to come into the office.
Sure.
So they may not like it, but they better see value out of it. If they don't like it and they don't see value out of it, then you're going to have a really big problem on
Right.
your
Right.
hands.
I think that's where you get a lot of the pushback from
Yeah,
employees.
exactly.
They don't like it and there's no value. And what's the point?
Exactly.
Yeah. How does Robin help solve the problem?
Yeah. So we talked about the way that the office actually physically functions. So we have a technology platform that allows companies to manage a hybrid workplace, because the flexible piece actually makes it much harder to run an effective office. So the logistics of running an office become much more challenging. So as an example, so for us, I told you, we increase the number of conference rooms, restrict the number of desks. Tuesdays are way oversubscribed in our office. And this gets back to for most companies, if you're in any kind of knowledge-based industry, the office expense is your second largest expense after employee expense.
Makes sense.
But the problem is, do you want to size the office for this peak day? You're going to have 1 or 2 days a week. Do you want to size it for somewhere in the middle? You don't want to size it for your lowest level piece, right? So
Right.
what we do is we size it for somewhere in the middle, but then that becomes really hard to manage. Employees having the right resources, the right things to use. So we provide a software platform that makes sure that employees, first of all, office managers can be flexible and constantly experiment with different layouts, different from soft seating to hard seating to the number of conference rooms. And then also allowing employees to connect to it, saying, all right, I have a place to sit, I have an assigned seat, or maybe I share a desk with you, and setting that up very easily in Robin so that on Tuesdays you have the desk, on Mondays I have it, on Wednesdays somebody else do, so people can really get the most out of their office,
Yeah.
And then finally looking at data around it. For a story for us, what we were finding was that, back to the single people in conference rooms, some of that is important. Like for us, it's customer calls and sales calls and that kind of stuff. And what we were finding was, if we were looking at, we didn't have enough conference rooms. But what it was, we didn't have enough types, the right kinds of conference rooms. We had too many sort of bigger conference rooms. And if we looked at the analytics of it all, what we're finding was we had lots of 1 or 2 people sitting in those conference rooms. And then there weren't enough at all for the actual meetings where you need to have a conference room for it. So what we did was, we moved offices recently. We put in a lot more phone booths. We put in a lot more smaller conference rooms. One of the things our platform does is we use AI to look at meeting room descriptions, and we can say what is, and bucket things together of what the actual scheduled event is in the meeting room. As an example, like one-on-one conversations. It turns out many meetings in conference rooms are one-on-ones. People just have their weekly one-on-ones. They're having it in person. We
Sure.
found something like well over 100 different names for a one-on-one. If you just looked at meeting descriptions, like I might just say Micah Jeff. Some might say Micah Jeff one-on-one. Some might say Micah one-on-one weekly, right? Like literally well
Yeah.
over 100 things. This is where we can actually use AI to say, actually, no, these are just one-on-ones. And so let's make sure that we have the right room structure to support all this activity. So not only do we help with the operations, but then the data around it to make sure that the office is actually effectively supporting hybrid work and flexible work world.
That makes a lot of sense. And making sure that you do have the right type of space available, because you don't want space sitting idle, but
Right.
you don't want one person sitting in a 15-person conference room either.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we see a lot of that.
And so what Robin does then is like desk booking and room scheduling and, like you said, workplace analytics.
Yeah, so that's a piece of it. Really a full-on workplace
Yeah,
experience
manages your entire
program.
workplace.
Manages your entire workplace. So the maps, so employees can see. We can see also. So average customer of ours has usually, between average customer, a couple thousand employees would be the average customer, but it would range from a few hundred employees to the hundreds of thousand employees are larger customers. But even things in a hybrid work world, which is I'm in today, I see Jeff. I'd like to go see Jeff in person. He sits 2 floors above me. Is he here today or not? And in the Robin platform,
Oh,
you can
that's good.
actually check in and say, oh yeah, actually I see Jeff checked in today. And so I'm going to wander up and see if I can catch him to talk to him about this project that we're working on. Versus these are these little problems in this, because I can't take for granted that you're necessarily in the office today. Little things to remove. What we like to say is we want to remove all that friction from working in person to make it so you can focus on the things that matter, which is collaboration.
Yeah, I like that. And then be able to find them because they may not always be at the same desk or the
And
same
that's
location.
exactly. So, and then technology throughout the workplace. So digital displays, so you could see things like the office map. You can find your way to different things. We've added some stuff recently to things like catering orders. So once again, often things like meetings. The reason I'm coming into the office is because I'm having a meeting. Maybe it's external with clients or with partners, or maybe it's even an internal meeting.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to add catering very easily to that stuff. And you think about these processes right now, it's often I have to do it in multiple different places. We want to remove all that friction to make sure that when you're in the office, you're actually being productive. And that's what the Robin platform does. So both for employees, so really easy to use for employees, they can do these things in Teams and Slack. We have apps and all of that, as well as for administrators. So administrators can really control it all from behind the scenes. So the way we think about it is that we allow administrators to be way more effective and using their office space effectively. And you think typically people running the office have a million different jobs. They're trying to do all this other stuff. And that's one of the things that we've seen in the post-COVID landscape is that really good offices have more of a concierge experience associated with them. They look more like the Silicon Valley offices because they have to be a good experience. I'm competing with people's
Right.
homes, right? So
Right.
my home is my most comfortable place. Like it's built around me, and I've got my kitchen is 10 feet away, and everything else, right? So offices, we've seen this move to concierge experiences. But if office managers are just spending all of their time just doing administrative stuff, so what we do is we really focus on automating all of that. So they can run the office very effectively through our platform. That allows them to really focus on the employee experience, which ultimately is going to yield to better outcomes for the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, the timing of Robin is outstanding. Coming out of the remote period and getting back into hybrid, and what does that look like? I think the timing is perfect
Yeah.
for what you're building. Incredible growth. What's been the biggest challenge in scaling the company?
Yeah, biggest challenge, and it's been really interesting. So we've been very lucky, hit the market well, growth has been fantastic. Over the past 2 years, the challenge has been this rationalization of what people's office footprint is. People had a lot of office. They then have a lot of organizations have reduced their office footprint substantially, obviously, as they think about hybrid work. At the same time, more and more companies have been adopting hybrid work. For us, it's been this transition. We actually, over the past year, we've seen it kind of really pick up again, which is we need the office to have real purpose. Like you need to have the office utilized. So people with an office that isn't really utilized very much, are you going to invest in a software platform to help you get the most out of it? No, if it's not very utilized very much, then unless you have the employee policies and workplace policies and everything else in place, this rise of structured hybrid work has definitely been a benefit to us as people have created clear expectations of what office usage looks like. It then creates constraints around the office. When an office is well utilized, then that's when you definitely need a software platform like ours to be able to get the most out of it. So that transition has been, I'd say, both a good thing for us, but also created some bumpy spots in the road as people really rationalized how much office space that they've needed.
Makes a lot of sense. And you're certainly not just market timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely an art to being in the right place at the right time and building the company, seeing the opportunity and building something that fits. So it's not just being in the right place at the right time. There's a lot of hard work that goes
A
behind that.
lot of hard work. So I think
Yes.
understanding the market right now, and listen, we're getting to another weird time right now. So if we think
Yes.
the first 3 months of this year have been way bumpier than I think most people were expecting, and certainly a lot of uncertainty continuing. And we see this in the SaaS world, which is
Yes.
in the past since 2022, we've been in this tech session, and people have once again be really thoughtful about what software tools they're using. This using best in class all the time, which is specifically for people that have SaaS growth businesses, typically where we have best in class applications, which has allowed us to build the growth we have. But the past few years, really, people have thought differently about that. They said, all right,
Yeah.
can we really afford best in class? We really just want to consolidate. We want to try to save money. That's been one of the prevailing sentiments around SaaS for the past couple of years. We were starting to see we were breaking out of that this year. And then obviously the past few months, I think, are having people looking at budgets closely again and looking
Yes.
at belt
Yes.
tightening again. So I think in growing a SaaS business in times like this, I think that the two things have been in SaaS for about 20 years now. I always go back to two things, which is get super close to your customers. I think that in times like this, if you're providing real value in solving real problems and pain points for your customers, that you'll get through times like this no matter what. But if you're off just a tiny bit, then times like this can be challenging for you. And second, which is, I think most people are in this mode right now, clearly continuing to think about cash runway and just making sure that, and I think that's one of the things this year, which is why people are freaking out a little bit, is everyone thought that this year was going to be, hey, off to the races again. There's going to be a deregulatory environment. Taxes are going to be low. Interest rates are going to be coming down. And geez, like the SaaS engine is going to roar again. And then clearly this uncertainty is recession risk now. Most economists are putting it around 60%. This wasn't even like a twinkle in our eye 3 or 4 months ago. So I think quickly reseating expectations and saying, all right, cash management is going to be really important again this year. Growth, hopefully, like we can get to that place. And this is this issue with the uncertainty land. But Unfortunately, the prevailing sentiment of the past few years in SaaS world, I think, will be important again this year, which is a little different than most of us, I think, thought things were going to be.
Yes.
But listen, this is reality, and we got to quickly reset to that.
Yeah. And we've been through cycles before like this
Yep,
and made it through. There's ups and downs all the time. But I think you're right. Just the expectation coming in, and that could easily change as well.
absolutely.
It's
And
changed in
quickly.
the last couple of months and done a complete 180.
Yeah,
And I think we could see that again as well. And
definitely.
a couple months down the road, things could be awesome.
For sure, for sure. And I think that's exactly right. And I think it's back to tolerance. I think with cash management and running a SaaS business, the one challenge is once you spend it, you can never get it back, never get it back again. I think that's the one thing. If we look at other times we've been through turbulence, I was at a SaaS business through the 2008 financial crisis, during
Yep.
COVID, clearly, and thinking about it now with COVID, to your point, we had 2 or 3 bad months, and then all of a sudden it was off to the races. But you can always pick up spending relatively quickly.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And I will say, this is something that's changing. We've put this focus on being an AI first company really in the past 6 months. We've been, just like everyone, we were looking at AI and experimenting with it, trialing things, piloting things for the past 2+ years, really since the generative AI revolution hit high gear. And we are seeing, hey, we're getting some productivity gains, trying to pick and choose where things. But for those that haven't been looking at it, the past 6 months, the rise of AI agents and agentic AI has like literally been an entire game changer. It's
Yes.
unbelievable in the ability to impact just core parts of our business. So in the past 6 months, we've really created a mantra. Reading an article about AI native companies that can do so much with such little headcount, right? Their ability to leverage. And I said, geez, we're a company that's been around before the generative AI revolution. So I can't be AI native, but we can be AI first in
Yes.
everything that we can do. So we've really adopted that mentality. And to be honest with you, that we are just getting massive productivity. And parts of our organization, we're seeing 200 to 300% productivity gains by using new agentic AI tools. And so, from a cost standpoint, it allowed us to really keep up with growth, to accelerate product delivery, product roadmap, and not have to increase our cost basis very much. Once again, at times like this, that has been really helpful that we've been able to make the company so much more productive without having to really add employee headcount. Obviously, for most startups is by far your number one expense, without
Yes.
having to add a huge amount of expense. So I think for other growth stage companies out there, if you're not literally diving, I'm not talking about piloting stuff anymore. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about full scale, full on adoption of the newer AI tools. I think you're missing a really big opportunity, and especially in an uncertain environment like this.
Without a doubt. And regardless of the economy, it's never a bad thing to have cash.
Right.
Cash management's always important. Profit. Hey, fundamentals matter. But
Absolutely.
you're exactly right. The opportunity that is in front of us with AI and being able to extend the workforce
Yep.
is massive. And I love that 200 or 300% gains.
Yeah.
And that is really significant, especially in a high growth company.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's changing so quickly. And I think that was a realization that we had. We'd been looking at stuff and trialing and piloting, which as we talk to organizations, that's what a lot of companies have done, and they've
Yeah.
been seeing. I'd say not unexpectedly, then you see different levels of adoption and different levels of productivity. And what we saw these tools were all of a sudden getting so much better. They're just changing so
Yes.
quickly. And we said, what we thought we knew just even a couple months ago has changed fundamentally. And we got to take a close look at this. And as we took a close look, we said, wow, these are like truly game changers. And I'm not being just grand about that proclamation at all. So then what we had to do is say, hey, listen, like this can't be a pilot. This can't be, hey, we give you a tool and decide whether you want to use it or not. These are going to be mandates. These are going to be the foundation that we're going to build, that we're going to grow the company on right now. And that's been really important because the people management and change management around AI is just as important, if not more important, than any of the technological advancements. And what we've seen, that's where we've been able to get the real gains, is really saying, hey, we're standardizing on this. There's no choice. Either you're going to be an agentic developer at Robin, or maybe this isn't the right place for you.
Right.
Because clearly, like, if you want to continue to do your job in a post AI or pre AI world, that's great, but this is not going to be the place for you to continue to do that. And we've seen great adoption across the organization as we've really focused on being an AI first company and everything we've done, from everything from clearly software development's a area that there's been massive gains recently, but to HR, to finance, and you name it, it's definitely helping across the organization as we take in that mentality.
Without a doubt. And it is going so fast. I've seen tech move fast over the years. Nothing like it's been the last 2 years, and especially even the last year.
Jeff,
It
it's
just
unbelievable.
leaps and bounds. It's going so much faster than I even expected.
It's
And
really unbelievable.
it is.
And often you see hype. I'm often skeptical of some of the hype that
Yes.
surrounds some of these things. It's not hype. It's not hype. And it's amazing. And the other thing is people expect then that, hey, it's perfect. It's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect. But the way we describe it to our employees is having agents work for you or like having junior or entry level employees work for you. So they're not going to be perfect. You're going to have to train them. You're going to have to oversee them. You're going to have to correct their mistakes, all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, they're going to make you way more productive. If you are 2 or 3 junior level employees working for you, you're going to be way more productive. And that's the way agents really work and the way to think about
Right.
them. So as we think about even hiring for us now, we want to hire people that are really being supervisors for AI agents. And once again, the gains we're seeing from that are just absolutely massive. But it takes a different mentality. It takes that shift, that change management across the organization. And I think people think, okay, I'm going to adopt this tool and I'm going to keep doing things the way I did before. And this is going to be fire and forget. It's not the way it works, but
Right.
it doesn't mean that the benefits aren't massive. And to your point, they're changing absolutely constantly and getting
It
better, by
is.
the way, which is amazing. This is the worst they're going to be right now. They just
Right.
getting better and better and better. And they're game changers right now. And they're just going to keep getting better and better.
Yes. What have been some of the biggest use cases that have had some of the greatest gains for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, using agents in development, so software development by far. So once again, this is for other SaaS companies out there. It is unbelievable. So we were using, I won't name what tools we're using. So this has become an advertisement for different companies. We were using co-pilots for a long time since they came out
Sure.
for the past 18 months, 2 years. And we were seeing 20 to 30% productivity benefits from them. Good. Listen, like I can get 20 or 30% productivity benefit. I'm going to be happy with it. But they really didn't change much at all. So the two things we've seen is, first of all, the agentic coding tools. There's a few really good ones out there. There's a couple leaders. We use one of the leaders. I'll remain nameless of what, so I'm not doing an advertisement for them. But we really started, we've been trialing them for about a year, but about 6 months ago, between the composer, the way the whole solution worked, there was just all of a sudden this massive step function increase in how used. And that's where we started seeing the 200 to 300% productivity gains as a story. And it helps in two ways. So first, I was talking to one of our senior software engineers, a really experienced guy, an amazing, brilliant developer, been at the company for a long time. So he understands the code base and everything. He's like, hey, I started this side project 6 months ago. I put it on and off, wasn't really making progress at all. So I put it down 2 months ago, and I decided I was going to pick it up again. And then usually it would take me a week just to like reviewing everything, doing documentation review to try to pick this back up again, get it started. So instead, I put it into our agentic tool. And in 2 hours, I had made more progress than I had in the past 6 months.
Yeah.
And here's what's pretty amazing. The context understanding of the new tools is incredible. So when we think about version 1 of the co-pilots, they didn't have context. So for more mature growth stage companies like ours, they didn't help because they didn't understand the existing code base really
Right.
well. The new tools have just such insane context. They understand the code base. So not only does that help them be way more productive, it does something else that's really different. In the past, growth companies like ours, you really had to have people that understood your code base really well because you're always building on your existing code base. Like this changes the game. They can focus on the new rather than trying to review and make sure we understand the old. And second, they're always offering ways to improve what you're doing too. Like it's amazing. The new tools are like, hey, by the way, like while you're doing this, have you thought about changing and the ideas are really good. It's amazing. So we're seeing the 200 to 300% productivity increases definitely in our software development organization. It's such a massive, like we are literally pushing out new product features so quickly that it's becoming a challenge to train the sales and customer success organizations on all the new stuff we're
Yeah.
rolling out. Like I'm actually not like it's not overstating that. It's pretty amazing, Jeff.
Oh, that's great because that used to be the opposite problem. Dev was always behind the requests and the backlog was so big, it would take the next 80 years to get through the backlog.
Yeah.
And now it's happening quite a bit faster and
Yep.
sales is trying to keep up, which instead of sales begging for new features, they're trying to figure out what was just released.
For sure. And it's you can literally see the acceleration. Listen, we haven't been able to solve all problems. This doesn't solve world hunger per se, but the increase is you can like literally see it. The other thing is, so we're using agents to speed up our software development. The other thing is we're introducing agents ourselves into our software platform. And once again, we've been embedding things like generative AI into our solution to some benefit, but it definitely, in the SaaS world, depending on the application, it's got limitations too. And we try to work around that. And then using agents to solve the problems of, I'd say, V1 of generative AI has been a massive game changer too. Our ability to like tackle hard problems, do it super quickly using agents themselves. The new agent frameworks out there and everything has been a huge form factor change. So we're rolling out first agents within our own application, and the speed at which we're able to do that, the challenging problems we can solve, and what would have taken before 4 or 5 sprints of entire teams, we are now it's taken one person, one sprint to do. It's pretty amazing. On that example, we are seeing such a benefit. Hopefully, this is of use to other SaaS founders and the people run SaaS companies out there. We're moving to micro sprint teams from that productivity thing. You can say it and be like, all right, like
That's good.
it's just making these grand proclamations. But we are actually reducing the size of our sprint team by half. So our sprint teams were typically 4 to 5 people. We're reducing our sprint teams to 1 to 2 people, and they're just as productive as our old sprint teams that were 4 or 5
That's
people.
amazing.
And you get this other benefit because before you had to have this coordination across the 4 or 5 people and everything. And when you only have a 1 or 2 person sprint team, then you don't have the coordination tax. You don't have any of that stuff.
Yes.
This is rubber meets the road, like real productivity gains we're talking about here.
So good. And we could talk about this for
About this for a
hours.
while, I'm sure. I'm sure. Exactly.
It's so good. So good. I mean, seriously, we really could.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up with this. What's one piece of leadership advice you'd give a founder navigating the hybrid work revolution and building a SaaS company in this crazy world we're in?
Yeah. I think as founders, as CEOs of SaaS companies, one of our biggest responsibilities is creating a culture for the organization. And the culture really the reflective. What are we trying to achieve, right? What are the growth goals? What are the customer goals? How are we trying to solve pain out there in the world? And the culture has been widely written about, but it's also the hardest thing to define in organizations and how you create it. And I think that's the key thing when you think about hybrid work is people expect it just to happen because culture, some of it is intentional, but some of it just happens. It's a reflection of what the founders how the founders act, what those first group of hires, how they act and everything. But what happened is you had this shock to the system, just like an economic shock where everyone went remote. And then some people have just rolled with that without really thinking about what they want the culture of the organization to be. And I think if anything right now, it's time to be more intentional about what the culture of the organization is. If you want the company to be fully remote, okay, it's great to do that. And some companies are very highly successful fully remote. If being in person is an important part of the culture or important part of the organization, you need to be intentional about that. And I think what we've seen is, and the hard thing is, it's hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard to do. There aren't easy answers. And listen, we live and exist in the middle of this world. We see the best practices. We see the best companies. We get a firsthand view of all of this stuff. And yet in our management team meetings, we have hours long debates over very specific things around trying to be a good hybrid work company. And we still have that. So like I said, we haven't figured out all of the details yet. So be intentional about it because ultimately you're trying to achieve an outcome, whether you're super early seed stage, whether you're C or D late stage, you're trying to achieve a goal, and the culture of the organization, the employees you have, the talent you have, the culture you've built, literally there's nothing more important in the organization than those things. And what I've seen is the pandemic hit there's been way less intentionality around that. We see people coming back to it now, which is why I see some of that debate. I'd encourage you to really think deeply about that and then go work to achieve it.
So good. Well, where can people learn more about you and about Robin online?
Yeah, just come visit our website at www.robinpowered.com and or ping me on LinkedIn, and always happy to connect with folks.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link all of that in the show notes. Micah, it has been such a great conversation. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. It's great being here. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks again, Micah, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Micah and Robin at robinpowered.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our channel on YouTube as well. It's at Champion Leadership. We have full video episodes over there for you, along with outtakes, training, shorts, lots of resources over there for you. That's at Champion Leadership on YouTube. You know, thought leaders share. Share this episode with someone who is ready to innovate, somebody like you. Everyone who shares this week gets a custom scent called Success and Vibes that instantly makes your startup 30% more fundable and maybe smell a little better. I don't know. What if understanding your cash flow could be the key to building a truly profitable business? Next time, we sit down with Phil McGilvray, cash flow strategist and financial literacy advocate, who helps entrepreneurs simplify their finances, grow sustainably, and create businesses they truly love. That's pretty awesome. And what if building elite teams was the secret weapon for scaling your company? And what if building elite teams was the secret weapon for scaling your company? Coming up on Tuesday is a double founder episode talking to two awesome people, Harry Masters and Udav Mehta from Inflection Group. They're talking about how they help high growth tech companies hire go to market leadership teams that drive massive revenue expansion. Absolutely fantastic. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.